The corporate cop sues Woolworths and Coles, claiming they misled customers by saying they were dropping prices when they were actually increasing them. Plans to change the Reserve Bank Board look dead in the water, and the price of the cheapest EV in Australia drops below $31,000 for the first time. Welcome to Fear and Greed Daily Business News. For people who make their own decisions, it is Tuesday, the 24th of September 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, the main story this morning, the country's corporate regulator is alleging that Woolworths and Coles claimed they were dropping prices on hundreds of products when they were actually increasing them, thereby misleading customers.
In a federal court filing, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission alleges that Coles and Woolworths would increase prices by at least 15% in a short space of time, then lower them as promotions, Woolworths as prices dropped and Coles as down. The regulator says this was misleading because the promotional prices were higher or the same as the prices those products were previously sold for, and the discounts were illusory. ACCC Chair Gina Cass-Gottlieb said in times of cost of living pressures, it's critical that all pricing claims and price discounts are accurate. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said the allegations, if proven, are completely unacceptable and not in the Australian spirit. He announced an exposure draft of the Mandatory Food and Grocery Code and legislative amendments, which means the supermarket groups could face huge fines. The regulator alleges Woolies misled customers about the cost of 266 products, including Tim Tams, Dolmio sauces and Kellogg's cereals. The allegation against Coles is over 245 products, including Colgate toothpaste, Cadbury chocolate and Bega cheese. Coles said it would defend itself against the allegations and that it placed great emphasis on the building of trust with all stakeholders, especially our customers. Woolies said it would review the ACCC claims.
Now, I know these are all allegations at this stage, Sean, but this is a terrible look, isn't it, for the supermarkets? What's it actually mean for them? Could they be fined out of this?
Yeah, so the ACCC wants the federal court to force the companies to pay penalties, which could amount to tens of millions of dollars. Now, this case is on top of the Competition Watchdog's review into how Coles and Woolies set prices, and in the background the Coalition and Greens have accused the two of price gouging. More immediately though, the news sent the share prices of both supermarket chains lower. Woolies fell 3.4%, meaning in 2024, this year, it's down about 10%. Coles was off 3.2%, though it's up 15% this year. Coles really has had a much better run than Woolies. The view among investment analysts is that it has been picking up market share on Woolies. Maybe the longer-term fallout for Woolies and Coles is the public relations disaster, which will encourage shoppers to buy in places like Aldi, Costco, IGA, other independents. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said the supermarket's actions could have led to inflation. He was asked about that. That's the sort of publicity a company doesn't want. So at the end of the day, the public relations disaster, and let's face it, Woolies and Coles weren't having a great time of it. In the weekend edition, you talked about the story where their brand value had declined and now two of the most distrusted brands in the country. This just adds to that. Bad news for the big supermarket chains.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And yesterday, when this news first came through, we posted a video about it to our social media channels, including to TikTok, Sean. And it went gangbusters on TikTok yesterday. There were hundreds and hundreds of comments from people. There is a lot of anger out there towards the supermarket giants. There is just this general feeling. You read through it and you just go, people really feel like they are being ripped off.
Yeah, there was an example given by the ACCC yesterday for a product from Coles. They said it was $5.50 for a long time, many, many weeks. They upped it to $7. And I think I'm right in saying 60 days later, I think it was 60 days, I might have that slightly wrong, but a short period later, they decreased it to $6. And they said, hey, this has gone from $7 to $6, down. In actual fact, it had gone from $5.50 to $7 to $6. And that's the sort of thing that the ACCC is not happy about.
Yeah, okay, I can understand that. And clearly, the public has had enough. So there's going to be an awful lot of attention on this one as it plays out. And of course, they are at this stage still just allegations by the ACCC. Now, Sean, local markets, how do they perform yesterday?
The S&P ASX 200 closed down 0.7% to 8,153 points. It was the first negative session in 8 trading days. Consumer stocks fell most, no surprises there. Woolies and Coles led them lower. Ongoing concerns about the strength of the Chinese economy is putting pressure on iron ore prices. Subsequently, BHP, Rio Tinto and Fortescue Metals are under pressure. Gold miners did pretty well yesterday. The price of the precious metal pushed above a new high of $26.31 an ounce. The uranium miners, including Boss Energy, Deep Yellow and Paladin Energy, they surged after news that a major nuclear power plant in the US was reopening. The big banks were mixed. Webjet was the biggest laggard, falling 11%. It split into two yesterday, something called Webjet Group and something called Web Travel Group. Michael?
And speaking of travel, Sean, great segue this was. You've got an interview coming up after the show with Jacob Kirkanis from Jarden Australia, and he's talking about, well, it's a form of travel. He's talking about aviation.
He is. We talked to him about what's going on in the sector, how Qantas is performing, whether Virgin will actually list, what the market is like, where it's most competitive, international versus domestic. It's a fantastic chat.
Yeah, it really is. If you are like me and quite enthusiastic about aviation, or even if you're just interested in investing, or you just like a really interesting conversation, then stick around. There is something in it for you. Coming up after the show. And what's happening in international markets, Sean?
Oil prices are creeping higher. I mentioned gold. It's doing well. The Aussie dollar isn't far off a high for this year after a surprise cut in a key Chinese interest rate yesterday. The local currency, pushed back above 68.3 US cents. Now, the record this year is 68.71 US cents back on January 2. Go you good thing. I'm sure it can recapture that mark. And Bitcoin is buying just under 64,000 US dollars a unit.
And a quick little reminder as well, at midday today, the new episode of Ask Fear and Greed, the little bonus episodes are only 5 minutes or so long, where we invite listener questions and we answer them. That can be anything on business or the economy or anything, really. If you've got a burning question that you want to hear, well, it's not really my explanation. It's usually yours, Sean. But
it's our explanation.
Our explanation. I add my own little tidbits.
Yeah.
They're not particularly valuable, but they're tidbits nonetheless. If you want to hear an answer to a question, then shoot your question through via fearandgreed.com.au, head to the website, or any of our social media platforms, and we will pop it on the list and we will get to it ASAP. Speaking of ASAP, Sean, we will be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, plans to create a specialist monetary policy board at the Reserve Bank look to be dead after the government said that it wouldn't work with the Greens, who said they wanted an interest rate cut in exchange for their support.
That was never going to fly. In fact, it's a bit of a ridiculous demand given we're trying to make the central bank more independent. And anyway, the Reserve Bank's 6 current external board members will continue to set rates alongside top management. Now, this all came about because last year an independent review found that those 6 independents collectively lack the expertise to set monetary policy. The findings were based on the fact that the independent board members had never voted against a single recommendation of the Reserve Bank management, at least in the previous 10 years. All this, of course, comes as the Reserve Bank board meet in Sydney yesterday and today. Later on, we'll find out what they think on interest rates. No one reckons they'll cut rates. There's more interest in what the board says about the potential for a rate hike. While it's not going to happen, the board is likely to keep it as a live option, suggesting that they have a bias towards lifting rates, not cutting rates. Anyway, we'll see at 2:30 today.
Yeah, indeed we will, and we'll have all of the details in the afternoon report this afternoon. Property group REA has made a third bid for UK platform Rightmove, valuing the company at almost $12 billion.
In an ASX announcement yesterday, REA said its second offer of about £7.49 had been rejected. The new offer, which is, well, I don't know, I'll give you the detail, Michael, £3.41 in cash, plus 0.0422 new REA shares, is an increase of about 9.2% on the initial offer. It's a 41% premium to Rightmove's 6-month average price. It actually works out at about £7.70 a share. Chief Executive of REA, Owen Wilson, said the new offer provides a combination of immediate value certainty in cash and at the same time gives Rightmove shareholders an increasing opportunity in core digital property and adjacencies where REA has plenty of expertise. Mr. Wilson said he was disappointed at the lack of engagement by Rightmove's board. REA share price closed down 2.5% yesterday.
The cheapest electric vehicles on sale in Australia have now fallen below $31,000 for the first time, though experts say more expensive EVs aren't coming down in price.
MG lowered the price of electric vehicles in Australia again, their models, cutting the price of its entry-level MG4 hatchback to $30,990, at least till the end of October. The sum is $8,000 lower than its recommended price in August and comes despite strong sales for the vehicle in Australia, according to a report on AAP. The price cut makes the MG4 Australia's cheapest electric vehicle. Now, the MG SZEV is about $35,000, touch under $35,000. The GWM Aura hatchback is $35,990. MG Motor Australia Chief Commercial Officer Giles Belcher said the lower price was designed to encourage motorists on the fence about buying an electric vehicle to actually make the move. Now, the MG4 has been one of the top-selling electric hatchbacks in Australia this year. Almost about 3,400 units have been sold until the end of August, according to the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industries. However, experts said at the other end of the EV market, it's restrained, mostly because of the 33% tax on higher-end cars.
Sean, regulators want to license crypto operators under corporations law, and the Albanese government is preparing legislation to require crypto exchanges to hold financial services license. These are some big changes.
Yeah, they would set down rules for custody of digital assets to reduce risks for investors, hopefully, people who are investing in cryptos like Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. The plan had been to release an exposure draft this year. This is the federal government's plan, but it's unclear whether the bill will appear before the next election, according to the AFR. The AFR yesterday held a cryptocurrency summit. At that was ASIC Commissioner Alan Kirkland. He said licensing requirements will extend beyond digital currency exchanges to operators, because ASIC considers most major crypto assets are already captured by the Corporations Act. Many crypto developers have not attained AFSLs based on legal advice. They're saying their investments don't need to be captured by the current law. The point of this story, a lot going on in the crypto market, is heading for more regulation.
Love how you just really summarised it in one sentence.
Oh, I was going through and I just thought, oh my word, there are a lot of words here. Yep, more regulation for crypto exchanges and operators.
Makes you wonder how much faster we could do the whole report if you did that for every story, Sean.
Very true, very true.
Anyway, Melbourne is looking at its first $100 million home sale with the Grand Toorak estate of the Meyer family up for sale. Wow, this is significant.
Yeah, Cranlana has been owned by the Meyer family, founders of the department store chain, since it was purchased by patriarch Sidney Meyer and his second wife, Merlin, in 1921. The Edwardian mansion is being offered for sale by Meyer Family Investments, which is the private investment company established by Sidney and Merlin Meyer. Current Meyer Family Investments chair, Sidney Meyer, not the original Sidney, I hasten to add, what do you say that, Michael? A descendant. Descendant's the word I'm looking for. A descendant of the original. This Sydney said that after more than 100 years of family ownership and with the more than 80-member family's fifth generation expanding, the time had come to pass the keys of our home and its magnificent garden to a new owner and custodian. That's all according to the Fin Review. Now, Melbourne's most expensive home is a derelict mansion in Toorak, which another rich lister, Ed Craven, he of the crypto casino fame, he purchased that for $80 million in 2022. The highest price in Sydney is $130 million, paid by tech billionaire Scott Farquhar and his wife for a Point Piper residence. While talking houses, model Elle Macpherson sold her estate in Florida for about $27 million, twice what she paid for it 6 years ago. Nice investment, Elle.
Oh, that is a fantastic investment.
Sure is.
Turning to international news now, Sean, the US has directly warned Israel against a full-blown war with Hezbollah as the Lebanese militant group and Israeli forces engaged in some of their most fierce exchanges of fire since October 7.
In salvos capping a week of spiralling hostilities, Israeli jets mounted some of the heaviest bombing raids in southern Lebanon since the start of fighting, while Hezbollah fired rockets towards the city of Haifa. The escalating attacks have fueled fears that the hostilities could tip into a full-scale land war. John Kirby, the US National Security Council spokesman, warned Israel that there were better ways to ensure Israeli citizens could return to evacuated homes in the north, better than a war, better than an escalation, better than opening up a second front. That's according to the Financial Times.
Now, you mentioned this one in passing earlier in the show, Sean. A nuclear reactor at the notorious 3 Mile Island site in Pennsylvania is to be activated for the first time in 5 years after its owners, Constellation Energy, struck a deal to provide power to Microsoft's proliferating artificial intelligence operations.
The plant is famous. There have been songs about this for years. It was the location of the most serious nuclear meltdown and radiation leak in US history in March 1979, when the loss of water coolant through a faulty valve caused the Unit 2 reactor to overheat. More than 4 decades later, the reactor is still in a decommissioning phase. Constellation closed the adjacent but unconnected Unit 1 reactor back in 2019 for economic reasons, but will bring it back to life after signing a 20-year power purchase agreement to supply Microsoft's energy-hungry data centers. That's according to The Guardian. The restart is the first time a nuclear reactor in the US has been recommissioned after closure.
I think a certain generation of us, Sean, largely know 3 Mile Island.
I remember that Harrisburg was a Midnight Oil song. That's how I first knew about it.
It's from The Simpsons for me.
Oh, Michael.
Oh, no.
Yes, go on.
Remember the episode where, and I've mentioned this before, where Homer gets really, really, really obese and he's working from home, and then one thing leads to another and he nearly causes a meltdown at the nuclear power plant. And because he is so large, though, he physically blocks the pipe that's leaking.
Right.
Or and in doing so saves the day. And the quote from Mr. Burns was, "Homer, your bravery and quick thinking have turned a potential Chernobyl into a mere 3 Mile Island. Bravo."
All right.
And for me, as a child, that was my first introduction to 3 Mile Island. And I suspect I'm not alone.
Right. Well, I'm older than you. Midnight Oil singing about it. And there was also one of those John Cougar Mellencamp, one of those sort of middle America, Bruce Springsteen, someone like that sang a song about it as well. Far more cultured than The Simpsons.
Yeah. Gosh, I do very little for this show's credibility, don't I? It's really what I bring to the table. Bit of pop culture. 2 men, Sean, have been charged with stealing $230 million US worth of cryptocurrency that they then used to go on a fairly lavish spending spree involving travel and nightclubs and luxury cars, jewelry, palatial rental properties in LA and Miami. Wow, they really kind of cut loose.
That's right. The funny thing about it was that they kind of did it in about 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, then were surprised they were caught. The men, Malone Lamb and Jean D.L. Serrano, conspired last month to steal the cryptocurrency funds from a person in Washington, D.C., according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. It involves one other party, apparently, who was allegedly robbed of 4,100 Bitcoin. After disguising their theft by spreading the money between several crypto exchanges and mixing services, the authorities said the men went on their spending spree. According to a report in the New York Times, Mr. Lamb, who's actually a citizen of Singapore, operated under aliases including Anne Hathaway. Mr. Serrano went by Versace God. Perhaps it's not surprising that after a couple of weeks they were arrested by the FBI.
I love how they were really, really trying to fly under the radar there, weren't they?
Dear.
That is a fantastic story. Great one to finish on. Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview. Jacob Kourkanis from Jarden Australia is your guest.
All about aviation in Australia, especially Qantas, and what's going on in terms of their financial performance, how they're going reputation-wise, where you can get cheaper fares. There you go.
Yeah, it's coming up in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is also where you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter, which comes out tomorrow. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thanks, Michael.
It is Tuesday, the 24th of September, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.